Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with a bit of Total War Warhammer 3 Domination gameplay. Now this is the new game mode that is perhaps going to be the default for Total War Warhammer 3's multiplayer. And it's a mode that's definitely interesting to play. So in this matchup here, we are going to be playing as the forces of Khorne, squaring off against the forces of Cathay, ran by Mr. Nobody. And hopefully this matchup does showcase, I think, some of the fun stuff to be had with Domination, as well as what I think might be kind of some of the weaknesses. But regardless, we're going to kick things off. Obviously, you start with a much smaller army than the one that you can call in, and the reinforcements you can call in. Looking at our roster here for Khorne, we're starting off with the Exalted Bloodthirster as my Lord choice. This guy's pretty kitted out. He's basically got everything. He's got Deathbringer, Bellow of Fury for that breath attack, Bloodthirst, Burning Rage for the explosion to get out of trouble. And, of course, Wrath of Khorne, so we can get some explosions going. And, of course, he's a pretty tanky fellow. 90 armor, high speed, physical resist, really tanky lord, very hard to kill off. Alongside him, 2 Chaos Furies there to provide some aerial support. I didn't want to leave him alone in the air against, say, Miao Ying, and a bunch of Longma Riders. Because while he's a very potent combatant, especially with the missile pressure that potentially Cathay could bring, I don't want to bet on his chances there. Besides that, we're actually bringing several Bloodletters of Khorne here on the ground. So we got 2 Bloodletters, 2 vanilla variants, and then the Exalted Bloodletters. Now, for most part, what I've been seeing people run, it seems to be Chaos Warriors because of the tankiness of those units and just how sturdy they are. But honestly, Bloodletters do dish out a lot of pain. That bonus resist infantry adds up. Same with the AP. Really strong against Cathay and infantry, which tends to have good armor. And especially the Exalted Bloodletters, if they can get that Hellblade going, their damage output spikes to an extreme. It's really brutal. Now, for my opponent here, we do have a combo of 2 Longma Riders. These guys are going to be floating above the battlefield alongside a dragon-blooded Lord of the Lore of Yang. He is coming in on a Longma as well. Not the greatest combatant, but he does have okay combat stats for sure. Something like an Empire General tier, I would say, if I was to compare him to something. Looking at his kit here, if I could just get a beat on it. We do have a handful of spells here. The Might of Heaven and Earth, which imbues fire and magic damage, kind of like Flaying Sword of Ruin, honestly, but with the added benefit of extra melee attack. Does cost quite a bit of wounds and magic though. He also gets Jade Shield, which is a pretty crazy damage resist buff, though it only lasts 11 seconds, but kind of spammable, and it combos pretty well with the Strength of Yang, which boosts damage output around him. So comboed with the Longma Riders, you can get some pretty good damage output going in melee there. Besides that, we've got a foot contingent made up of Jade Warriors, Peasant Archers, and Peasant Long Spears, as well as an Alchemist who is simply providing that boost from Mastery of Elemental Winds, as well as Plague of Rust for that armor debuff. And you can see the debuff's actually greater just because we do have that Mastery of Elemental Winds. He also does have the Elixir of Puissance, which is pretty potent stuff. Can buff a single unit's melee attack. Once again, good for those Long Riders. Now, one thing I would like to point out immediately, though, is how Cathay here is being forced to move as a unit, and this is going to make it difficult for them to secure all the points, most likely. Now, air units, of course, cannot cap, so the Longma Riders here pushing forward, and I don't really feel like engaging and taking this fight, certainly not with the threat of Peasant Bow support. So you can see here we are pulling back with the Bloodthirster as well as the Chaos Furies, and sort of allowing these Longmas to pursue us. We obviously can't shoot back at them. I did not bring any missile pressure of my own in this build, but we're going to be pulling back here and allowing them to sort of take the center or control it a little bit. In the meantime, though, reinforcements coming on board. We've got some Peasant Archers as the first reinforcements for Cathay. In the meantime, the Exalted Bloodletters and Bloodletters are simply piling through into the bottommost cap point here, as well as the center one. At the same time, we've got some Fleshhounds of Khorne coming in. One thing I want to have available is the possibility of pinning down these Great Longmas if they land on the ground here, and potentially run them off the field in melee. I do have to be careful, though. Bloodletters, of course, very light on armor, and I do not want them getting shot to death by those Peasant Archers. Over here, we do see the Dragon-Blooded Lord getting a little cheeky and getting a charge into these Bloodletters, casting some magic here on the Longmas, and we're going to see them engage here. You can see the Might of Heaven and Earth going down, and these guys are going to mince through these Fleshhounds. Fleshhounds are now burning, and of course, that physical resist is meaningless against the magic damage. Melee attack boosted by 40. Just insane stuff here. You're really seeing the power against these Fleshhounds. But in the meantime, we have kind of snared these Longmas over here. And of course, the Exalted Bloodthirster comes crashing down to earth and beating the crap out of these Longmas. This is not where they want to be in life. And of course, there's no heals for them either. In the meantime, over here, Exalted Bloodletters are going to catch out some Peasant Horsemen, preventing this flank as the Furies bypass this main engagement. The Longma commitment here meant that there's nothing in the air to protect the archers, and we are able to get in with the Chaos Furies and start mincing up these archers down here. And that is going to cut the support Cathay can provide. You can see these Furies here committing into the Peasant Archers as well. Now, they do have Harmony going on, and if we check out the Harmony benefits here, when they're near enemy or near allied troops, sorry, they are getting some benefits to their leadership, an extra leadership of 8 at the moment, but they can get potentially 12 if there's better sort of buffing units around. But you can see, unfortunately, these Peasant Archers here, it's not going to save their skin. Those Chaos Furies are going to wreck them long before the Jade Warrior reinforcements arrive on the field. Perhaps would have been better to get some Peasant Horses here to try to chase them off, but at this point, a little too late. And you can see here the Bloodletters just running rampant, up to 11 kills, crushing those Peasant Horsemen and making them flee, as the Fleshhounds here are attempting to force a fight. Now, we are getting some pressure going here with the Bloodletters pushing down towards this cap. Hopefully we're going to be able to sweep that aside while the Furies do clean up these Peasant Archers. Now, one downside to Furies, I will say, is their low melee defense. One of the nice things about units like Harpies, for example, is that they've got very high melee defense. So units like Jade Warriors with their 24 melee attack, or Peasant Spears with 20 melee attack, are not going to do a lot to a unit like Harpies or Bats. But to a unit like Furies, where the melee defense is so trash, they will actually get minced up. Now, they certainly are doing a lot of damage to these archers, but they themselves will die pretty horribly, even to trash infantry. In the meantime, though, we were able to force these Longmas up and away. Unfortunately, Bloodthirster here kind of getting distracted by these Longma Riders that he's pursuing. We were able to take this cap here. We're going to be able to use our Exalted Bloodletters. There's nothing here that can really push them off, and these peasants are going to be made to flee. Down in the pits here, in the meantime, Bloodletters of Khorne are pushing forward to dispatch the Jade Warriors. This is a fight they definitely want to take AP, anti-infantry. These guys will mince through Jade Warriors like no tomorrow. It's really not going to be a problem for them. And soon we're going to be seeing them leaving a dent in these guys for sure. It looks like at the moment, I don't know if those Bloodletters are not attacking, they're taking a nap or something, I don't know. Maybe it's just because they were being pathed, but you can see just how quickly that damage starts adding up once they actually engage. In the meantime, up in the skies, we do see the Dragon-Blooded Lord casting some magic. Might of Heaven and Earth once again dropping on these guys, combined with the Elixir of Puissance. It's going to mince these Bloodletters pretty quick. Low armor and physical resist dependence is going to be irrelevant. Now, keep in mind, the magic resist doesn't help. That's something in Warhammer 2, this would be offset by the magic resist, but in Warhammer 3, spell resist is only spell resist. It does not apply to the magic damage imbued to these Jade Warriors. So they are just tearing through my poor Bloodletters here. Well, in the meantime, here in the pits, we are taking cap number 3. You can see the Exalted Bloodletters are just going to Shrek these Peasant Horsemen. That's not even a contest, really. And we are getting some more Chaos Furies on the field, looking to rout off these Longma Riders for good. Now, it might not seem like an ideal fight, but honestly, with their high weapon strength and the crippled state of these Longmas, plus if we're able to get the charge here, we're definitely going to be able to run them off the field. In the meantime, here in the pits, Fleshhounds are running off the Peasant Archers, while the Bloodletters go to town on Jade Warriors over here. Unfortunately here, bit of a misplay. I dive in with the Exalted Bloodthirster, popping Deathbringer and Bloodthirst, getting up those stats to an insane degree. But I'm kind of surrounded here. We've got the Longmas, we've got the Dragon-Blooded Lord, we've got a bunch of spears, and honestly, while the Bloodthirster is a strong character, he's certainly not invincible, and you can see just how much damage he's taking very rapidly here, getting melted by all this anti-large and AP around him. Fortunately for us, though, we have managed to take the center. You can see the Hounds here kind of running off some of these archers. We're keeping the Cathayan reinforcements off our backs. Well, in the meantime, we are going to summon a unit of Skull Crushers of Khorne, and this cavalry is going to be very difficult for the Cathayans to deal with. 130 armor, shielded, and this is actually, it's 30% shields there, so definitely solid number. Monstrous weapon strength, frenzy, of course, fear. Yeah, they're an insane cavalry in melee, and they're going to be pushing in here to try to help our Bloodthirster get out of combat as the Fleshhounds dive in from the rear. Unfortunately, this blob, while definitely mostly favoring us, does mean the forces of Cathay are getting some decent value out of their battle harmony, getting +9 leadership there. Pretty nuts. Fleshhounds here trying to rout these troops off, but honestly with that leadership up, they're going to stick around. And the Exalted Bloodthirster here is forced to flee from the field with that armor debuff upon him. Jade Warriors here getting pressured by the very angry Skull Crushers. These guys unfortunately do lose a model there to the Dragon Lord and the Longma Riders, but now these guys are overextended, and we are able to pivot our Bloodthirster around and come crashing down for a critical blow. Meantime, Bloodthirsters here dispatching the Jade Warriors, just showing how powerful these guys can be. These Exalted Bloodletters, the normal Bloodletters, doing work. Hounds unfortunately being wrecked by Peasant Horsemen and Jade Lancers. So Jade Lancers kind of like a cheaper version of Empire Knights. Basically the same stats as Empire Knights, except 10 less armor, and they do get Yin Yang available to them. But they're going to be able to run off these unfortunate Flesh Hounds. But in the meantime, here in the pits, we are definitely slugging it out, and we're summoning more Bloodletters to the fray. These guys chevron up a little bit, and they're going to be looking to get in the fight as we beat the crap out of the Dragon-Blooded Lord. He just really got caught here in a bad spot, nasty position to be in, and Exalted Bloodthirster is just having an absolute ball, crushing him. Over here, the Bloodletters are getting shot to death by the archers, that armor not holding up very well at all, but we will hopefully be able to get rid of those Jade Warriors beforehand, while in the meantime, our Exalted Bloodletters are able to clamber up the steps and hopefully capture the third point. Which, until now, this entire game has been uncontested by either side, which has been feeding units into this meat grinder in mid and south, and nothing's been committed up north. Now, the Jade Warriors here do hold pretty strong. We are actually pulling back. I don't want my Skull Crushers getting caught up under fire from the Iron Hail Gunners, which are now getting some harmony there. We are going to commit the Harpies, or sorry, the Furies, into these Iron Hail Gunners. I want them off the field. I cannot afford to have them pounding away at the Exalted Bloodthirster or my Skull Crushers. They're far too expensive units for me to risk that way. Over here, the Bloodletters are going to win against the Jade Warriors. But Peasant Horsemen plus more Jade Warriors will probably take this fray. Keep in mind, Bloodletters do not get the benefit of the Hellblades, so they're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to soup up their damage over time. But we are seeing a mighty Terracotta Sentinel stride to the battlefield, backing up some Celestial Dragon Guard. So my opponent really committing heavily to take this northern point. Exalted Bloodletters, even crippled like this, can probably take on the Celestial Dragon Guard because they will be able to get their Hellblades going, and then they'll probably mulch them. But with the Terracotta Sentinel in there, not a chance. Fortunately for us, though, South Point is ours. Bloodletters here overwhelming this box. The Iron Hail Gunners broken. Skull Crushers running amok. 128 kills on these guys now, and Chevrons rising quickly. None of these units being committed here are going to be able to contest them. And with the Bloodthirster there, this is going to be a massive rout. Bloodletters are going to be able to start chasing these units off the field, and really, it's a charnel house in Khorne's name. More Skull Crushers being summoned, and this is a unit that Cathay honestly kind of struggles to counter, especially on a map like this one, where unfortunately, sorry about that guys, unfortunately on a map like this one, Cathay can't really bring their cannons to bear. It's gonna be, they can't really bring units like their long rifles to bear, and units like the Iron Hail Gunners are just not very good against Skull Crushers. They're just not accurate enough at short range. They're going to get overwhelmed quickly. So there's not too much pressure you can apply on a map of this style with so much terrain, and that means these Skull Crushers are really going to be a tough unit to counter. Maybe Celestial Dragon Guard could do it, but Celestial Dragon Guard is currently being mulched over here by some very angry Exalted Bloodletters who are soon going to be proccing their Hellblades, and that will probably snowball into massive advantage. That 36 charge bonus really paying off against these fairly elite or I shouldn't say fairly elite Cathayan infantrymen. It's just not going to matter over there. In the meantime, here in the pits, Furies continue interdicting the backline, and that is allowing me to pivot my Skull Crushers this north. Now, my opponent here is interdicting the middle. He's going to be able to take that over, and is potentially going to try to get into the southern point here, but we are in the meantime able to run off all these troops. You can see they're routing off the field under the pressure from Bloodletters, and that is going to allow us to control the south here. In turn, the Bloodthirster plus these very healthy Skull Crushers are going to be untouchable, essentially. They're going to be able to get rid of these Jade Warriors in an ideal position. While up here, you can see Hellblades are procced, 53 weapon strength on these Exalted Bloodthirsters, and they are going to town on the Celestial Dragon Guard. This Terracotta Sentinel is getting in there to start capping, but it's going to take him forever, and by the time he's done there, we are probably going to win against the Dragon Guard. Bloodletters, just look at them go. 103 kills, and they've racked up like 50 of them against the super elite infantry unit. That's an 1100 gold infantry. Keep that in mind, guys. In the meantime, though, Fleshhounds here running off the Alchemist. Skull Crushers getting caught out by Peasant Horsemen and Jade Lancers, but they really don't care. None of these units can truly threaten them. 168 kills already, 71 weapon strength. Brutal stuff, brutal stuff. And the Bloodletters who are here pursuing are going to be able to fall back and hopefully dispatch these Jade Lancers there pretty soon. Now, as you can see, though, there's still a lot of time on the clock. My opponent still potentially has time to come back into this, but in the meantime, we were able to route out the Celestial Dragon Guard, and we're going to be able to pivot our Exalted Bloodletters using a Horn of Khorne there, the cheapest or the lowest end God buff that you can proc. We're using that there to roid up our Exalted Bloodletters, help them dish out some damage, and win this fight a little more decisively. While in the meantime, the Exalted Bloodthirster does take to the skies to come support his troops. And the Terracotta Sentinel, while very potent against the Bloodthirsters, it's still going to take forever to kill him just because it's cumbersome and it doesn't kill very quickly. And once that Bloodthirster's in there with his 580 weapon strength, even without buffs, he's going to be making mincemeat out of him. At this stage, it is definitely a Khorne game. There are a handful of archers coming onto the field with some supporting Celestial Dragon Guard, but unfortunately, despite the fact that my opponent is probably getting quite a decent supply benefit from the comeback mechanic, it's just not really enough. The hounds are coming in, they're routing off this infantry, the peasant archers here getting caught out by the Furies, and unfortunately Cathay is forced to concede. Now, definitely a brutal back and forth here. I think it showcased just how powerful unit abilities like Hellblades can be. Showcased that you probably should always send a unit up to try to cap those peripheral points. The fact that neither my opponent nor I went for that might have... If one of us had capped that point earlier, it might have put some pressure to shift units around on the other player, and the fact that neither of us did definitely might not have been the best move. But looking at the build here, I think it definitely shows some of the problems with Domination. For a faction like Cathay, Cathay is kind of like Empire in a way, where they're a faction that definitely needs unit cohesion, or maybe even more akin to Dwarves or High Elves. You really need your units working together. Your missiles need to be protected by your melee, your cavalry. You need a cohesive army. And that's very difficult to utilize on Domination. Domination, especially on a map like this where you can't use artillery really, you need to move as a unit, but you can't do that when you need to control multiple points. Whereas a faction like Khorne is a bunch of melee. Domination definitely favors fast-paced, fast movers, melee, hard hitters. And a faction like Khorne is kind of favored in that situation. Khorne's units, if I throw Bloodletters against 2 Jade Warriors, Bloodletters are still probably going to win. Bloodletters will be able to take just about any cost-effective fight on a flank. And my opponent can't commit, for example, a Peasant Archer to some random cap, because that Peasant Archer will get run off. He needs that Peasant Archer working together with the Jade Warriors. Well, for me, a unit like Bloodletters or Fleshhounds is good enough. Unless they get massively outmatched by a far more expensive unit, they're going to be adequate to take a point and hold it, or overwhelm a point. Or, for example, 2 melee units, like, say, Bloodletters and Chaos Furies, if squared up against, let's say, Celestial Dragon Guard and Peasant Archers, Furies and Bloodletters will probably win just because they're units that can work more effectively as in a smaller unit situation. Whereas you need multiple spears, multiple Jade Warriors, multiple Celestial Guard to protecting your Peasant Archers or your Iron Hail Gunners to really get value out of them. That said, it does force you, this sort of situation does force you to be mobile, does force you to adapt quite a bit. Looking over the builds here, you can see the Bloodthirster getting massive value, 3,000 damage, a lot of it against the initial long muscle call-in, as did the Exalted Bloodletters. They just did work. These guys were absolute champs, mulched that super expensive Cathayan infantry, and held their own on that northern point, gained 2 chevrons, pretty insane stuff. Bloodletters of Khorne, they did come in chevroned up, but still almost paid for themselves, close to 800 damage on both of them. Very, very strong stuff. Furies, it's not showing them to have paid for themselves, but honestly, I'm pretty sure they ran off the archers, which is close. That's decent. These guys actually did pay for themselves. They did some good work there. And definitely Skull Crushers did work. I never got to summon. You can see some of the units I had lined up for additional summoning, and I didn't get to summon some of these guys. But you can see the Skull Crushers just did work. The initial unit showing their mettle against Cathay in a melee scrum. Now for Cathay here, the Dragon Blood Lord did okay. I think the amount of his difference his magic made was probably more significant than any melee damage he or she was going to do. I believe it's a she in this case. Alchemist, also not huge difference, but once again, it's about the spells. It's about the supporting abilities. Long Marauders, unfortunately, did not perform. And I think that was one of the big problems early on, is that the Long Marauders got wrecked, and even though my opponent was able to capture the southern point, he was not able to really actually defeat my army, so I just had to wait for a handful of reinforcements to actually cap the point, and I was good to go. Jade Warriors tried, but honestly, Jade Warriors are just not able to hold up the Bloodletters. I think if I brought Chaos Warriors, the Jade Warriors would have actually held up better, because their armor's good, their defensive stats are solid, they're kind of like Dwarf Warriors. It would take the Chaos Warriors way too long to kill these guys off, so they might have been able to hold better there, but against Bloodletters, they melt. Archers, unfortunately, kind of getting run off. These Peasant Spears got massive value, and I'm not even sure against what. Maybe against those Furies, or maybe against the Fleshhounds, but that's some insane value there. Cherricotta Sentinel really kind of failing. Crane Gunners never were summoned. You can see just the difficulty with getting value on some of these units. Like the Jade Lancers here tried their best, but really, they're only able to deal with the cheap kind of disruption units like Hounds, or like the Corn Dogs, or the Furies, but not able to do too much to the actual meat and potatoes of this build, the Bloodletters and Skull Crushers. So we really just see how those units got butchered there. And unfortunately on a map like this, it's very difficult to get your handguns to do much work. A unit like a unit like Crane Gunners is just going to struggle. But regardless, very well played to my opponent. I think it was a really fun game, but I do think it highlights some of the problems we're going to be seeing with Domination. I think it's definitely a mode that is going to be favoring melee and mobility over army cohesion necessarily. It's much more about small unit tactics. What it reminds me of a lot is Relic RTS games, so Dawn of War 2 and Company of Heroes 2. Not sure it's an improvement over quick battles personally, but it definitely has some benefits. There's definitely a bit of pressure to actually move your army around, which is good. I think the capture points in general are a fine addition. It forces you to actually move your army around rather than just camping on your bum. But though with the way the comeback mechanic works and some stuff like that, it might definitely need some working out of kinks. How well it is in the long run, we'll definitely see. But hopefully you guys did enjoy some Domination gameplay. There's definitely going to be more Domination as well as land battles coming up in the near future. But I do thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.